In this video, I'm going to be showing you the best way to cook trout using the greatest and oldest cooking techniques in the world with salt and fire. Now, I've cooked trout in many ways throughout the years. That includes smoking, grilling, oven baked, or just in some foil over the coals. But in this video, I'll be covering this lake trout in salt, throwing it in my homemade fire pit, and then serving it on some bread with tomatoes. So let's get started, shall we? So if you want to try this recipe out for yourself, don't feel like you'll need to use a rusty axe to chop some wood in slow motion. I'm just cooking this over some oak logs just because I think it's cooler, but you could always do it in the oven. Now here I'm just starting a small fire, and I'm going to let it burn down into some charred logs so I can place a pan easily over it. I've never cooked fish this way before, but I've seen it done many times. The salt layer insulates the fish, slowing down cooking and allows the fish to be cooked in its own juices. So to make that salt mold that covers a fish, you're going to need some coarse salt. It could be kosher, sea salt, whatever you want. Then I'm going to crack a few eggs and just use the egg whites. This is going to allow me to create the same texture you'll get when mixing sand and water for sandcastles. Then I'm going to cut a few lemon slices in slow motion for you and follow up with some red onions. I'll then grab my lake trout and I'll stuff it with some thyme, rosemary, and add my lemon slices and onions. Now all those ingredients are going to cook in that lake trout differently than if you were just throwing it in the oven. All those ingredients are going to cook within the juices from the fish, which will give it much more flavor. Once the fish is stuffed, I'm going to lay down a first layer of salt where the trout will sit on. Then I'll add my trout and neatly start to mold that salt around the fish, trying to create a perfect mold. So it's now ready to be thrown on top of that fire. I'm just going to let the fire burn down a little, but just where I have a few charred logs. I'm going to adjust the logs into almost a flat surface so I can lay my pan right on top and seal it with an old Weber lid for only 20 minutes. Now I'm going to get my bread ready to be toasted for a few minutes, and then I'll chop up some onions and tomatoes to get it ready for that almost trout bruschetta I'll be making. So it's been 20 minutes, it's time to check on that fish. Now that smoke isn't directly hitting the fish, what it's doing is it's almost being infused into the salt, and that salt is slowly going to transfer that charcoal-like flavor to the fish without making it taste too smoky. Once that salt is a light brown color, I know it's ready. Now because this salt was wet and then slowly baked, it didn't get the chance to oversalt the fish, which is a good thing. All it really does, it creates a seal over the fish, becomes this hard crusted oven for the fish, so you shouldn't need to worry about this fish being too salty at all. You could try and cut around it, and if you're lucky, it should come off in one piece. Once you take off the shell, that fish is going to look very firm and stiff until you start peeling off the skin and picking that fall off the bone meat. You could already see how beautiful that trout looks. That skin should almost be satisfying to take off, and the meat should look moist and well put together. You could see how those onions and lemons I put in there almost caramelized within the fish. Now you should let this fish rest for about 10 minutes and then it should be ready to pick. Now you can add this trout really on anything. I picked the meat off since it was small and added it to some bruschetta, but this was a larger fish. I would have definitely thrown on some tacos or over some rice and even in a salad. When I took a bite of this fish, I couldn't believe how good it tasted. A lot of people like to talk bad about lake trout. They say it has an off or muddy flavor. I strongly disagree, and I like to just argue that these people just can't cook. Anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments on this style of cooking. I enjoyed it so much. I think I'm going to be cooking a lot more species in this way just to see if it's really the best way to make all fish taste as good. So please leave a like and subscribe if you'd like to see a lot more cooking videos like this one, and I'll see you next time.